Church online. Is it possible? I have found that when you say church online, I'm just going to stop you right there. It's an online outreach. The goal, whatever we're trying to do, whenever we're trying to do it, is not to leave them online. Okay? So, as somebody who does ministry online, I want you to understand right off the bat, church online speaks more to the goal than where we're actually trying to get them. And what I mean by that is we call it church online because I'm ultimately trying to drive somebody to biblical community. When I look at Acts, early on in the church, when they're meeting together, doing life together, they're with one another in their home. But what I mean by church online is that I'm meeting people where they're at, and I'm trying to give them a taste, a dose of what biblical community is in some minor way. And so there's all sorts of reasons why this word, when you put this word online and you link it with this word, it becomes problematic. It's because this communicates not connected, false community, fake self. And it's a little bit of a unknown, right? We're still dealing with the ramifications of being online. Is that safe? And there's sci-fi movies get into our minds, and we have like Bruce Willis and different types of things where like we're no longer meeting people, we're just in surrogates. So people get freaked out. This word, obviously, we've been fighting about this word for 2,000 years, and there's enough denominations and things to keep us all confused. And so when we put them together, of course it's going to be a bloodbath. And so my thing is, don't be worried about all this, okay? Here, I'm gonna erase, okay? Make you feel better. And what I want you to think about is doing an online outreach. So, society. When we look at how Christians are represented in our culture, we see more and more that there's a fog over us, what we believe. This isn't new. We see this in the early church. The church was seen as people that were cannibals. Wait, communion? They're eating each other's flesh, and especially when you read the book of John, still to this day. I mean, I've led Bible studies many times in my life, and when you tell a high school student, to read the book of John, they're like, wait, Jesus actually said that? And so there were rumors and all sorts of things. I mean, the early church was painted as a cult, and it's because the Roman Empire had this control, and then you had other sects that were spreading these rumors. And so the reason is because there's a lack of information going out. And so I think we're moving into a season where in America we're going to have that more and more with every political candidate that continues to run under the false umbrella of evangelical. Every celebrity that says that they're a Christian and something happens that apparently contradicts. There's a fog over what we believe, and rumors and stuff gets out that misrepresents us. And online is an opportunity not to wait for somebody to stumble along into our church. So it used to be you'd start a church and you would do this and you'd be like, boom, and then all these people would walk by and then just like hop in. Like I have a friend who owns a Chick-fil-A, and they do reports of like traffic. Everybody who more traffic in front of your building, the more people stop and get chicken, and there's like an equation to that. And so there's only so much you can grow based off the flow of traffic. And so that used to be the flow of traffic, crops on the building, you get a lot of people at your church. That doesn't happen anymore. It's not a natural thing. We're moving into a phase of a generational phase where more and more people are unchurched. They're unfamiliar. Their parents didn't go to church. It's not regular. It's not a habit. And so we have to be more proactive in our evangelism. Really, this is what we have been doing and should have been doing all the time, going to people. And online is an opportunity to go to people where they're at and not allow the rumors to define us, but allow our story, our faith, our testimony to define us. And so don't worry about the whole idea of church online. Think of it as an online outreach, okay? That's an H if you didn't know that. Online outreach, okay? It's evangelism. So everything from your website to social media to your YouTube channel, Facebook, everything in between, your email list, it represents who you are to the community. And so what better way for somebody to have a safe way to experience what you're about than coming to your church online? And so that is the way I would frame up this whole conversation of church online, is that it is the front door to your church. And I think about it, we do 52 weeks a year. We're trying to get people there. And your senior pastor, if you're the senior pastor, or if you're on the teaching team, you're always having to crank out material. And so what if we started leveraging that material in strategic ways to last beyond that week? And so what I want to talk about is overall, how do you position your church online? What would a funnel look like? What are the key platforms that look like? Some goals, how to do groups, and then ultimately metrics and so forth, and what does the future look like? And so I'm going to talk through that. We're going to deep dive into it, and I'm excited that you've gone along this journey. It's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, so the first thing is, how do you position your church online within your current context? I will say right off the bat, you need to have an honest conversation of what is your existing vision and your existing strategy. And if you're trying to recreate the wheel, you're going to create a silo, and it's not going to function right. Because ultimately, you want to come alongside your vision as a church as a whole, and how can you use your church online to best come alongside? Because that is most likely your vision is how you are staffed. It's how you are resourced, both financially and with material. And it's the way to set yourself up for the most success. And so I'm going to talk through some ways and stuff that we do it in our context, but you ultimately have to have an honest conversation. What is our vision, and how can the church online be a win for your vision at your church? And so right off the bat, one of the first questions to ask is, are you going to be a megaphone, or are you going to be a global community? And so, yeah, this is a megaphone, yelling. But what I mean by this is that a megaphone is you have a local church presence, and you are being a megaphone to everybody around you. And the idea is that you're reaching your local community. Your online service goes up. It's rolling. Even when you do ads, you can use something like searchable.church. Where Christian Vision has created this amazing resource where your church can get free Google ad money, $10,000 a month. They will help you do it for free. And you can, instead of you target ads all around the world, you target it just in your zip code. And the idea is that you're just targeting your zip code. So when somebody comes to your service online, they see it, and then they go, oh, look, and there's a banner ad that says, hey, this church is in Austin, right down the street from me. This church is in South Carolina, or this church is in Seattle. And the idea is that you're being a megaphone. You're doing it very strategically in your zip codes, and then you're only hitting that area. Or are you going to be a global community? Are you going to be an outreach to everybody? And really, no matter what you do, you probably will have a little bit of this. But this is where, right off the bat, when you're thinking about it, it's important, because this sets you up where you're going to have some answers. Like, what do you do with somebody who comes to Jesus and lives in Yemen, or lives in the Philippines, or lives in Japan, or lives out of state in America? Do you have a process? Do you care about that person? Do you send them to a network church? Do you find them a church? Do you help them start a group with your church when they're out of state? And so right off the bat, are you trying to be a megaphone, or are you trying to be a global community? And the thing that's unique is what you can do is that I would say everybody start here. Start there. Start with a megaphone, because that's where you're resource staffed, and that's where there's a lot of win. And you could figure out if it makes sense in your context. But as you grow, you can actually do a hybrid, and you can do both of these at the same time. And in my context, I'm actually a hybrid, where I'm doing a megaphone, and I'm sending people and connecting people to campuses all around Southern California and all around the world to our global campuses. but I'm also allowing people out of state in different areas to start groups in their homes and also online, and I'm providing a pathway to biblical community. And so I kind of do both and, but this is kind of gives you a framework. Remember, you're trying to align it with your church's vision, your pastor's vision, your vision, how you're resourced and staffed, and then you're sitting, okay, do we want to be a megaphone or do we want to be a global community? But always start up here, figure it out where you're most set up for success, and then as you grow, you could start figuring out, okay, what would it look like to expand this? Because honestly, one of the most interesting things about doing an online church is that you can actually have some data points to figure out where your next church's campus or sister church or network church, whatever it is, could be. So you can use your online data to inform you where God is leading your church to grow and reproduce. Remember, everything healthy reproduces. And so regardless if it's a church with you, maybe it's a partner or somebody who's going to go plant a church, but the idea is that you can use this data point as you're strategically growing to help inform and guide. Maybe we should go there. And so that's just a little setup in aligning this. Now what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about funneling. And I want to talk about what are the key things you need to know to kind of move somebody through, and what does that really look like in an online context. So when we talk about your funnel, something that you need to be aware of is this idea of persona. And if you don't know what persona is, what I would say is pause for a second, open up a tab or on your phone or whatever, and type in HubSpot persona. HubSpot is a marketing company, a business company, and they talk about this word persona. And all that is this idea is that who are you trying to go after? Who is your prime target? Because when you think about your prime target in your context, like if it's on church, maybe the language that you use should be leaning towards an unchurched person in your online community. Now, because it's online, the idea of a local person who lives in Texas, even a local person who lives in San Antonio versus Austin, who's 25, they might look different to somebody who is in California. California is notoriously, we're a California bubble, where the way I grew up in Southern California is very different to somebody in New York or somebody in Minnesota or somebody out of the country. So when you think about persona, you're thinking about what does your ideal target look like? Age, like 25, is it male? What type of music do they like? Are they church? Did they grow up in a church? Home, unchurched? And then the Texas, I don't know, you just kind of start making stuff up, but you run data based off kind of initially who's coming to your church now, or who do you want to come to your church, and then you start asking questions. You find people who are already in your demo. You ask a neighbor who's 25 and hits that, you go, hey, what do you like? Who are you listening to? And the idea is that you're not creating a website or a church online for yourself. You're already a believer. And that's the hard part. The more we walk with Jesus, the more we don't understand what it means not to have Jesus in your life or part of your life. My faith is so integrated into my wife and I interact with each other, how I raise my kids, how I spend my money, and so it's really hard to. It's so tangled up into everything, especially in my thinking. And so, who is your persona? Who are you going after? Check out HubSpot. They actually have a tool where they will help you create a persona. And then the idea is that persona drives your process. And then I would actually challenge you. This would be a challenge. Give them a name. Give it. Like I'll use a name like Dane. That's actually my second child's name. So Dane. So I think about. So Dane is 25. He lives in Southern California. He's grown up here. He went to church once or twice as a kid, but never really stuck around. His parents are divorced. That's not, my wife and I are married. So I don't want you to be thinking anything. But he's educated. He went to college. He's looking for somebody to marry. He's kind of over dating. And so you see what I'm doing here is I'm trying to personalize it, because the more I personalize it, the easier it is for me to create things for that person. Even like, what are their desires? What do they want? And the idea is you lay out your page and everything, and even the events you do and everything based off what would Dane say about this. And it's super helpful in marketing. And this is what people do. This is what big marketing companies do when they're trying to sell something. If you're watching an ad and it hits you, most likely it's for you. They've thought about your demographic. And so I think about this when I watch, everything from when I watch a basketball game to when I watch when I'm watching like the X Games. Mountain Dew commercials are hit for this very young adolescent target, an energy drink as well. And I always crack up because energy drink commercials always get me. I don't drink energy drinks anymore. I used to, but I think about, man, like there's something about that where my soul is very young, that I'm attracted to that commercial. Or basketball commercials, I'm really into that demographic. But even that demographics change, and so it's very helpful when you're determining things. So know your persona, have an honest conversation. And most likely your church, you already know this because you guys have been doing it, but figure it out, name that person, and when you're talking about this process, you can talk through that persona. And so, a little bit about persona. Again, if you Google marketing persona, HubSpot is probably the expert there. They have a bunch of resources to help get you going. But let's talk about your funnel. So what I mean by this is, overall, what is your ideal use case of your persona? So I'm going to say Dane is, okay, so when I look at this, every church has their funnel. What does it look like for somebody to come through your process? And in my context, what I'm going to ask you to check out is Purpose Driven Church. Just Google Purpose Driven Church, Rick Warren. You can check that out. There is, they actually have an online conference that you can get access to called the PD Essentials Conference, and you can actually get an inside look of how we do church in my context. And so I'm just going to give you a rough idea, but a rough overview. But the thing here is, ultimately, we look at Matthew 22, Matthew 28, the Great Commandment, the Great Commission, this idea that there are 5 things that each believer is called to do. So, and it's how we measure the health of the individual, the health of the church, and so forth. And so the idea is that we're called to evangelize. We're supposed to share our faith. We're called to worship God with our entire lives. We're called to grow in our faith, discipleship. We're called to serve others in love, and we're called to fellowship. And so those 5 things, we call them the 5 purposes. So ultimately, what we want is, we call it purpose-driven living, or you can also call it balancing the 5 purposes. So that's what I want. I want Dane not just to attend church or be part of a small group or read their Bible. I want them sharing their faith with other people, worshiping God with their entire lives, serving others in love, growing in their faith, and fellowshipping with other believers. So that's what I want. At the end of my funnel, this is my goal. That's what I want. So the question is, how do I get that? And so again, check out Purpose Driven Church, Rick Warren, or the PD Essentials online conference. And you can get it for cheap, and you can kind of get a deep dive of how we do church in our context. So overall, I'm a local, and then I'm going to translate it to the online community. So what you do is, we are going from our weekend to our classes to our small groups. And so the idea is that people come here from an invite. So Dane gets invited by a friend or sees something in a paper or whatever. Not a paper. Who looks at papers anymore? It was on Huffington Post. And it goes to the weekend. And our weekend services are geared towards people that are unfamiliar with church. And we make it ask there. We have a next step card. And we are always looking at trying to move them deeper. We don't want people just to be part of our weekend. We want them to attend our class. And we offer classes once a month. 101, 201, 301, 401. 101's about belonging to the church family. 201's about spiritual growth. 301's about serving, how to have your shape. And 401 is about how to share your faith, both personal, local, and global. And so the idea is that on the weekend, you're going to attend the service, and you're going to be asked, hey, take our class. And then we offer that once a month. And in that class is, and actually in one-on-one, to become a member of our church, we ask them to, you have to know Jesus as your Lord and Savior. You also have to be biblically baptized by full immersion. And you have to commit to our membership form, a covenant. And so the idea is there that we solidify some really key things in the Christian faith, and we hold them accountable. And then in there, they learn about the importance of being in a small group, that you can't just attend and then get some information, that you also have to do life with other people. And so we actually encourage people to join a group or host a group with some friends, and we make it really easy for them to do that. And to learn more about how we do groups in our context, and I'm going to talk through this here, especially with online groups, read Small Groups on Purpose, Steve Gladen. You can get a deep dive right off the bat. I'll bring it up again, but Small Groups on Purpose, Steve Gladen, a really amazing book on how to do small groups in your context. And there's a whole network, small group network, that can help you do that coaching around the world and in the United States and how to do this. But the idea is that it's with other people that transformation happens. And what's amazing about this is our goal here in our context is, immediately this is head, this is heart. And so the idea is that there's things we got to know, but there's also things you got to do and feel. And so, and you can say this is expressing it, this is experiencing, this is, and so forth. And so the idea here is that we're trying to move people down the funnel. Now, so what does that do? What does that have to do with online? Well, we're trying to do the same thing. Church online, online outreach, we're trying to get people to come to know Jesus and come to live for Jesus. That's what I want. So I know there's a lot of people that will never just wander into our church. The fog, remember. And people, just right off the bat, people are part of church online because they're sick. They might be dying, or they're physically sick and they can't go to church anymore. They might be extremely busy. They're in a phase of life, maybe new kids, or they just got a new job, or they got a job where they can't come because they got a shift, or they're unchurched and they're unfamiliar and they've just been invited. And so don't dismiss the reasons why people are part of church. I mean, think about it. You're trying to do an outreach. You're trying to go where people are at. Jesus went out into the crowd. He went to the temple courts. He went to everywhere to be able to talk to people online. People are online. Meet people where they're at. And so this is an opportunity to reach people that are sick, people that are busy, and people who are on church and just unfamiliar with the culture of going to church. And so this is an opportunity to go there. And so when I look at this funnel, this is what I want. I want people balancing the 5 purposes. That's what I want. So how do you do this online? This is not rocket science. Look at this here. I'm gonna do it in red to make it even more clear. So this becomes not a weekend. This just becomes an online service, and these classes become online. And these small groups become online plus home groups. And so all you have to do is figure out how to do your online services. How do you stream it? And then how do I get my classes captured in such a way to do it online? And then how do I do online groups, but also how do I have home groups? Because what happens here is now you have 2 parts in this, where you can have online groups like Facebook groups, and you also have home groups, because I don't want to just have people part of online groups. I'm okay with using that for a season, but ultimately I want people in home groups, but I can give them an online group experience, a taste. Remember, think about crawl, walk, run. Our faith, that was a terrible steps, but our faith it's kind of like steps. Is that a lot of times Jesus does this with come and see, come and die. He didn't tell Peter and all the disciples, hey, by the way, you're abandon everything and you're going to die a terrible death, Peter. He said, come check out who I am. And even after 3 years, they didn't fully understand it. Jesus did this in his ministry. He said, come and see, come and die. But the die part didn't come till later, and at least didn't solidify till later. And so the idea is that you got to give them small steps to the ultimate goal. Remember, we want everybody in physical community, biblical community with other people. But how can you use an online process to ultimately drive them to that? Maybe this doesn't happen in the first 6 months, but maybe in the course of 12 months you get them there. You have them start attending online in a safe way. Maybe they're sick or something. And now they take an online class and they kind of get their training. It's like a catechism thing. And then they're part of an online group. And they're starting to open up and chat and video and share what's going on in their life. And after doing that for 8 to 12 months, you ask them, hey, you've been part of this online group for a while. What if you did this in your home? So now what you've done is that you've created this step process, this crawl, walk, run. And we joke at, my boss Steve always jokes about slither. That slither, a lot of people just need a slither. But we all often forget how scary it is to live your life for Jesus. And our goal is, as pastors, as mentors, as leaders, as coaches, we're trying to help them in that process. But we can provide series of steps. And this is what Jesus does. He provides steps towards that. And so the goal here is to think through your funnel. What is your funnel? If you were to erase this, what is your current funnel? And most likely, this funnel should be whatever your church is. I would, if you haven't already, check out Purpose Driven Church. Check out the PD Essentials Conference online to go. There's so much here. There's so much here from community all the way to commission, but you can deep dive into that. But the idea is that this is how I position it. You have your classes, you have your service, you have your classes, and you have your groups, and then you have the ultimate goal. And then you do this. The way that somebody experiences this is that they're coming every week online, they've taken the classes, they're part of an active group, and now they're living it out daily. So now what I want to do is I want to take a couple moments and talk about platforms. So this is where you're probably like, well, yeah, I want to do this. So what are the platforms? So a couple platforms. There's 4 types of platforms you need to pick and decide. First, it's this platform, your service platform. How are you going to distribute your service? How are you going to get your media out there? And most likely, you're gonna record a service once a week in some way and get it out. I would say do not limit it to one, but the primary base that you should be using right now is the Church Online platform. Google the Church Online platform. Life Church built it. It's amazing. It's super helpful. They give you a free way to distinguish your service. And so right off the bat, you need to have this. And with that, the Church Online platform is free. You're going to decide to either do on-demand or streaming or both. So in my context, I do live streaming and I do on-demand. And so in a given 7-day window, we have 4 live, and then we put the on-demand file available right away. And if you want to do live streaming, you can do it in some pretty cheap ways. You can always test it out with Facebook Live on your Facebook page. But if you wanted to get a little bit more hardcore, check out a company, streamingmonkey.com. It's a great, those guys are amazing, a ministry-focused company that can help your church get up there. But the idea is that you're streaming. So you have your church online page and you're streaming. And we'll talk through how to lay that out and so forth, especially thinking about persona in your funnel. But then how are you going to distribute content? How are you going to do training? How are you going to have classes? Webinars and so forth? You got to have some kind of. So this is like your worship center, and then this is like your training arena. And so how are you going to do this? You're going to pick an online learning platform. You can use something like YouTube playlists or Vimeo channels, or you can do something more advanced like Kajabi. The new Kajabi is very advanced. You can use, I know people that use Prezi, but to create presentations to train people. There's so many different things you can do, but you got to have a way to distribute content to train people. Both train your small groups, train your volunteers, train your crowd, and then to move them down into the core and commission. But you got to have some way to do that. Or maybe it's just a page on your website. You do your church's /training, But you got to have a central place where you do that. And then you're going to have groups. How are you going to do groups? And what I would say is do Facebook groups. One of the first things you can do is that I would just create a large Facebook group, honestly. Create a large Facebook group that's like your church's online Facebook group. And the idea is that you get everybody into one group that you can have Facebook Live events in, and you can have some regular communication, and out of that you can funnel smaller groups. And so you kind of prove the model on a large scale, and then you say, hey, you want to host a group? Boom. Here's how you get your curriculum for your group time. You go here, and then in your individual Facebook group, you talk about it. But then you have a large Facebook group where you facilitate that. And then here, your resources, what you're doing is you're giving out resources here, you're giving out resources here, and you're giving out resources here, and that helps this goal. And so the idea is that everything's pointing towards this ultimate goal, helping each person live out the 5 purposes. And then the only other piece here that is not on here is kind of what I call it's like your communication channels. Are you going to do a weekly email? You can use something like MailChimp. I love MailChimp, super affordable. You can pay an extra $10 a month, I believe, and you can get some automation tools where we just started doing this about 6 months ago, where you can create a whole workflow that everybody on here that says that they accept Jesus, you can send them 6 to 12 emails over 6 to 12 months through creating an automation workflow on MailChimp. And so the idea is that you would have like a master list where you send a weekly email to your large crowd. And then you have things like ClickFunnels. ClickFunnels could be a way to create standalone website pages to help facilitate next steps. You can use lead pages. You can use a texting service. And so all these like kind of, I call it marketing, everything from Facebook pages, Twitter, to Hootsuite to manage your social media channels, your Google search ads, searchable.church. These are all kind of communication things to help facilitate this, help people get into the funnel, and also help people move down. And so the idea is that you don't want to keep somebody up here. You want to drive them all the way down there. Okay, so let's talk about groups. And so the goal, remember, is you're trying to move your person into physical community. That's the goal. Online outreach, give them crawl, walk, run steps to help them get into physical community. But remember, there's all sorts of reasons why somebody might be part of your community. They might be sick. They might be busy. They could just be super unchurched. There's also the reality that, and this just might be something just kind of broaden your perspective here. There might be safety issues. Either they're in a physical relationship where they can't get out, or they might live in a part of the world where they can't be part of a local church. And so again, when we think about that, it's real easy to be super limiting when we think about our experience. We can get to church, we do that. Now, there's a lot of reasons why we're already saved, and we're already super cultured and ingrained to come, and we understand the importance of that. But somebody that you're reaching, your persona, remember, whoever your target is, Dane, that person doesn't know how important that is, hasn't thought through that. Or in a case, they can't do it. So the idea is that you're thinking about that person. So always be thinking about your persona. That's why it's so important to have that down. So with groups, the idea is that you're trying to get somebody in a home with other people. And so what we do is, and to kind of deep dive into this, I'm not going to be able to go into a lot of depth into this. Check out Small Groups on Purpose by Steve Gladen. It's a very helpful book. We also have a network. He has a network that he oversees called the smallgroupnetwork.com. Check that out. Very passionate about having small groups. But what we've done is that we use a host model. And so that's really important, because our host model is essentially what we've done is, instead of having the idea used to be is that you have the master teacher model, where you have, you have these people, and they're all sitting here, and then this person is teaching the Word of God. And so that's a good model. That's a biblical model. People do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But the problem is that this person needs a lot of training. And so a lot of times when you think about starting groups, is you're thinking about how do you get that person super skilled. And so usually they need to be like fingerprinted, and they need to be all this stuff, and that's okay, but it's not really a scalable model when you're thinking about reaching a lot of people. Especially when you think about the best person to reach your next door neighbor is your fellow church member, the person who's part of your church. So how do you empower them to be an ambassador to reach that person? Well, it's not going to be through your church directly, your building. It's going to be through their home. That's a safe place. They can have them over, and they can talk about real stuff, and it can ultimately lead to a crawl, walk, run to your local church. And so what we've done is we use a facilitator model, and we use that word host. And the idea is that you have everybody in the group, and everybody is sharing with everybody. And so the reason why that's important is that we believe that everybody is part of the transformation process. Now, Joe might be a little bit ahead, and Sally might be a little bit behind, but the idea is everybody is part of the transformation process. And so we use the host model to kind of lower the bar of who can step up. And because we use video teaching, the video is the teacher, and we provide questions that come alongside. Now, the reason why I bring that all up, and remember, check out Small Groups on Purpose, Steve Gladen, and the Small Group Network to kind of go in deeper. But the reason why that's so valuable is because when you think about it in an online context, we harness all that same process, and it allows us to do groups both online and non-local. And so really, when you think about doing groups, all you need is content. You need a sign-up process, and then you need training. And then really there's this last thing, it's like a check-in. And so how are you going to get the content to them, the video content? Is it through a password? Is it a YouTube channel, Vimeo? Remember, learning platform, that's that area. Like, how are you going to get content to them? How are people going to sign up? What's the landing page look like? You can use something like ClickFunnels, a simple, reduced down landing page that's focused on your persona. Training, how are you going to train them? Are you going to use a form system like Wufoo is a form system? Check out Wufoo. You can send an automated email. So once somebody signs up, you send them an initial email that's automated that gets them started right away, a link to this. And then check in. And this is really important. How are you gonna make sure that group is living out the 5 purposes? Well, you check in with them. You check in right when they got started. You check in after they have their first meeting, and you check in once a month. And so that idea is this is what you need to do groups. And so when you think about online, it's all the same stuff. And the beauty part of this too is if you figure out how to do this in your online context, all these systems can be harnessed for all your local groups as well. And so it's really important because we've found in our context that our online systems is used by everybody now, because a lot of our groups just want to go through content on demand, and so they use our online system. And so there's a lot of wins. That's why think about your local, how to make it a win for your local vision. Remember, unity of where God's leading your church, and that's a big success. And so let's think about this. Let's think about online groups. So number one question I get asked is how to do online groups. So when you think about this, online groups, everything I just talked about, how to get content to them, how to get them to sign up, training, and then check-in process. Online groups, the easiest way for you to do this, Facebook groups. So you tell them, hey, great, you want to host a group. Start a Facebook group. I'm gonna send you a link to content every week to go through, and it could be video. You can even do as simple, and you can check out Talk It Over, saddleback.com/talkitover. One of the easiest ways to get started is leverage your existing content that's already being created. And what I mean by that is, okay, so you want to start small groups. You don't have to go out and make all this video content right off the bat. That might be the best thing, but start small. Start with something that is measurable and you can beta, test, beta. Okay? What I mean by that is try it out before you invest a bunch of money into it. And so what you can do is you can create in MailChimp an email list of all your small group hosts. And every Sunday afternoon, you send them 4 questions, discussion questions based off facilitating conversation in groups that are based off the weekend message. And so you tell them, hey, every week, watch the weekend message or attend church. And then I'm going to send you questions to talk about in your group. And the idea is that you use the pastor's teaching content or your teaching content to be the small group questions for all your groups. And so the small group questions are based off the weekend and they dive deeper to facilitate deeper conversations that are facilitating transformation. And so, again, you're using MailChimp, you're creating a host list, so everybody who signs up, you add into this list, and then now you have this weekly flow. And then what happens is that in a Facebook group, you tell them, hey, create a Facebook group and invite your friends to be part of this online group. And then you're gonna get questions every week. And then what you do is within the Facebook group, you can meet a couple different ways. You can just chat real time in a group conversation, or you post a link to a video conferencing software like Zoom.us or Google Hangouts. There's so many different ways to meet video based. I have found, don't get into the weeds of the technology. Tell them, use Facebook groups so you have like your group roster and just ask them to add you part of the group if that's something you want, just to check in on the group. And then once a week, they can have a set time where they meet all real time, and you can do it chat based. You can do text calls. You can even do a phone call. I have a lot of groups that use, they do video, they do phone group calls. Video is not working really well, so they went to a phone call, or they do a FaceTime call. And so the idea is you're just telling them, I want you talking about these things once a week. You figure out what's the best way to meet. And maybe it is just text-based for a bit, but maybe they gradually warm up. Remember, sharing your face can be a very intimate thing. And so maybe they want to just not share their face for the first month. And if the group is okay with that, that's okay. You meet video, you meet text-based. But the idea is that once you're getting content to them every week and you're having them meet, they can do everything in a Facebook group. So the beauty of this is that you don't need to go build something or reinvent the wheel. Use a platform that already exists. And that way this online group is now set up and they did it all themselves. You're just helping them. Here's questions to talk about. Here is how you meet. And here's some resources, and then what you're doing is you're just encouraging them. You're encouraging them as a group to live out the 5 purposes based off monthly kind of training, and then also you're just checking in and you're asking them, hey, how's the group going? Well, this is this, and then individually you're dealing with individual needs based off in your group. And so when you think about online groups, don't make it super complex. You just want to provide a way for people to meet and get out of the whole technology thing. I found technology is super personal. Mac versus Microsoft or whatever, iPhone versus Android. People are so particular. And so, reference a couple. Hey, Zoom.us is a great one. But if you want to do your own, that's okay. And all you want is you want them meeting regularly. And it's okay. Especially when you think about technology around the world, people are even more particular because different technologies are limited. A bandwidth is a limit, and so I was just talking to a friend, and Telegram is a huge messaging software that's really huge in Iran. So what am I to say to use Slack? But if something's already big in that region, leverage that. And so especially in states and in countries, there's certain technology that's more popular than others. Leverage that, and so just pick a way, a model, train them on how to do it, but let them meet however they want. And so that is online groups. That's kind of a deep dive. A real quick kind of overview, not a deep dive, but a real quick overview. But the idea is with your online groups is that you're not trying to keep them online. Is that we use this thing called online to offline. And so what I'm trying to do is that I have them be part of an online group. But ultimately what I've done is after they're part of an online group, 2 times a year typically, is that I'll go to people part of online groups and say, hey, you've been part of this for a while. How about you do this now in your home? You know what a group is about. How about if you take everything you've learned and you do this in your home and you invite some friends over and you host a group in your home? Now remember, I'm doing that because I have my funnel in mind. Is that I want them to go online to offline. I want my persona, my person, this person up here, Dane, that ultimately want them in their home with other people living out the 5 purposes. So they've been part of an online group for a while, but now I'm going to ask them, I'm going to coach them, I'm going to pastor them. Hey, why don't you take this step and go offline in your home? And I do that once or twice a year, and I give some incentive like, hey, we'll do this, or I'll send you this, and I'm helping them. And if they want to stay online, that's okay. But I'm taking my spiritual gauge and I'm remembering I got to help them. Sometimes you got to push them. Hey, you can do this. You can get 2 people together. You know how to do it online now. And then what you do is you can create if people want to join groups, all the groups that are open, meaning that people that are open to having new members, is that on a Facebook group, what you can do is that you can just put links to the groups. You can put links to the groups on the page. Here are all the open groups. Or you have a form that says, I'm interested in a group. And then somebody, a volunteer on your team or yourself can say, okay, this person's interested in the group on Wednesday, blah, blah, blah. And then you have all these groups that you are aware of. And you will also know, based off if you have 25 groups, you might go, half of the groups are kind of new groups. I don't really want new people to be part of that. I want new people to go to veteran groups. And so when you're plugging people in, you can kind of have that data. And in my context, what we do actually with my groups is that I have like my own funnel, even with my groups. And so I have new groups. These are brand new groups. They've been in our system, a month or so. Is that I'm trying to get all my new groups to become not non-red tagged. And what I mean by that is our red tag or non-responsive groups. So maybe they haven't talked to me in the last 2 to 3 months. So I might have 2,000 groups, but maybe 200 of them are red tag, meaning they're not talking to me, and I'm going to delete them in the near future. So I'm trying to make sure that the new groups are responsive. And so then they are green tagged. And so I label my groups that way. I have red tagged and green tagged. And so majority of my groups are green tagged, but I'm trying to make sure that they are responsive, meaning they're answering my phone call, they're opening up my emails. MailChimp, you can actually look at when you send an email, you can get an email list of not just those who reply to an email, but you can see who is opening your email. And that's a great read to see that they're actually interested in your content. But then I'm trying to get my groups to take my my classes, because if they take my classes, then I know that if they take one-on-one and they become a member, I know that they know Jesus, they've been baptized, and they've become a member of our church. They've committed to the covenant. And then we have a leadership course. We do it once a month, and it's also on demand on how to be part of a healthy group. And so the idea is that leadership class, we call it LT1 in our context. If you read Small Groups on Purpose by Steve Gladen, you'll kind of learn more about this. But the idea is that in that, I help them live out the 5 purposes. I teach them, what does a healthy group look like? A healthy group doesn't just do one purpose. It does all 5. It doesn't do it in all 5 every week, but over a 6-month window, you should be not just learning about God's Word, but you should also be serving your community. You shouldn't just be fellowshipping with one another. You should be sharing your faith. And so the idea is that in that class, I give them an overview of what that looks like. And then I have curriculum. And then the curriculum is I have different curriculums that help them live out these 5 purposes. And so I have curriculum that help them do the purpose of fellowship. I have curriculum that helps them to do ministry. I have curriculum that helps them to do worship. And so I can know that a group is healthy doing PDL, balancing the 5 purposes, if they're responsive, if they're a member, if they've taken this leadership class, and if they've gone through certain curriculum. And so even in my small groups, my online groups, and my home groups, I can do this. And so that's a crash course, Small Groups on Purpose. Check that out. I know I'm speaking real quick here, but we got a lot to talk about, and I want to honor your time. And so remember, in our process, we have online groups, and then what I've done is that in my funnel, I'm trying to get them to become home groups. And actually, in our context, we allow people to host groups in their homes far away from our church. And so, and that's why I believe when we say church online in my context, we really mean it. I really want people to come online, to take a next step, to take our classes, come to know Jesus, start learning that they need to be interacting with other people, and then they're part of an online group, and then really now they're part of now they're hosting a group in their home with other people. And so when I think about my church online, I'm not just thinking about an outreach anymore. I'm thinking about the people that are in homes, doing life, doing house churches with people in their community, and living out the biblical call of what it means to be part of the church. They're doing acts. And so this is where I want them to do. And now, because I already have the ways to distribute content, I'm sending out content that they can access through our online learning platform. I have a worship service that they can interact with. And now I provide some coaching on how to have a gathering in their home that's a little bit larger than just an individual experience. And this is why I actually think, and I have some skin in this game, but this is why I think having TV apps are so important, because now you're not just thinking about a website or a mobile experience. Now you're thinking about how do I get their content up on our TV, because a TV living room setting is a community setting. It's helping home groups have kind of a mini service in their room. And so you can do this in a variety of ways. You can help them with Chromecast that can get stuff up on their TV. AirPlay, Apple TV is a great way. You can have apps on the TV. And I actually, oh man, I can't even write right now. But if you go to tvapp.church, we've provided an affordable way to get your church on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire. But I really think long-term, when you're thinking about it, I think the living room experience is the win for church online, because now it's just not about a website. It's about a living room reaching those in your community. And now you can help them do things like communion. You can even help them to do baptism. You can train people, part of your home groups, to baptize each other. And that is cell groups, that's movement, that's house church. That's where it gets super powerful when you think about places that don't have churches, when you think about countries that don't allow the local church building to be up. You can use online resources to help reach people, grow them up, and then send them out. And so that's super powerful when you think about what is happening in your context. So remember, check out Purpose Driven Church, the PD Essentials Conference also as well. Small Groups on Purpose to dive deep. Rewatch this. I know I talked real quick, but this is really important. Remember, online to offline. It's an online outreach, starting where they're at and reaching them and growing them. I got a couple other things, closing thoughts, and things to be thinking about, metrics and so forth. And so we're going to do that in this last part. Okay, so I know I've talked about a lot. I know. I'm super passionate about this. I really think online church can be used in a very powerful way to reach people who are busy, who are sick, who are living in secret because their country isn't allowing them to express their faith publicly, and all the above, really unchurched. and that fog sits over people. And if you think about church online as an outreach, going to where people are, and you think about funneling in persona, that you start with them online and you drive them to a physical expression, that's where you can be super strategic, especially when you come along where your church is really strong at. You can start with a megaphone, but my challenge would be start broadening, and how could you be global? That's a powerful way to think about this strategically. Have these conversations in your church's context. It's super helpful. So, a couple things. First off the bat, when you're doing your church online experience, you're probably going to have something like this. This is going to be your website, and then you're also going to have some kind of mobile experience and then TV experience. What's really important is you're trying to move people down into the funnel. And so what you need to do is in your video is going to be the primary way that people consume your content. What I would say is have some kind of intro and outro in the video where you talk to them. Jump on the front and say, hey, thanks for watching online. Hey, by the way, before you jump off, make sure you fill out the next step card. And then the idea is that you're directly talking to your persona, the person watching. If you know that you're running ads, everybody's local, you can even say, hey, thanks for watching, in the Orange County area, or thanks for watching in the Austin area or the Manhattan area. You can get super targeted based off of who your persona is. And you can run things like through Google Analytics and so forth. You can run data points to see who it is, and you can get super targeted. But talk to that person. Have an intro video that you can put in. You can do it live in the service, or you can do it pre-recorded and put it in a post-edit. But talk to them and drive them to take a next step. Remember, it's not about building a big crowd. It's about building a very large core. And so how do you move people deep down into that? You ask them to take next steps. You ask them to make a commitment. And that's why a card of some sort is super helpful. You don't ask them a lot of info. HubSpot says that for every new question you ask, you kind of lose 25% of people who actually fill out the card. So you don't want to ask like a full address, social security, credit card, all that. Maybe just name and then contact. And then the idea is an email address or a phone number. Maybe if you're a global, you're doing a Skype handle. Maybe you need to do a Twitter handle or a Facebook. And then you have some easy next steps. Have stuff like, first time at your church. This is or my first time at church. I committed my life to Jesus. I want to get into a group. So everything that's in your funnel, you're asking them to take a next step. Prayer requests. Prayer requests are amazingly neutral things. I don't care what you believe. You'll take a prayer from somebody. So putting a prayer request is always a great way as a first step. And the idea is that in your intro and outro at the end, you're driving them to fill out this card. And the idea is you're taking your large amount of people and you're trying to get them to fill it out. And these are the people that are responding, and you're encouraging them to take a next step. And based off how they respond, you drive them deeper into your funnel. Remember, if you're thinking about service, classes, and this is terrible, groups, and then PDL, is that if somebody fills out, and this is absolutely terrible, but the idea is in the next step is that somebody fills out a prayer request. Great, they're watching online regularly. And I say, hey, by the way, I'm praying for you, for your mom, blah, blah, blah. But then I'm saying at the end of that, I'm saying, hey, by the way, are you plugged into a church? And if they're not, then I say, hey, by the way, come to this event or take her classes online. And then when they're in their classes, you get them into a group. And the idea is every touch that you have them in a phone call, in an email, in a post, whatever it is that you're communicating to them a next step. But this all starts with your next step card. This is the most important thing on your page outside of your video. And so that's why even if you have a TV app, I'm putting up my TV, is that you're driving them to fill out the card. And so something we do a lot is that we have a standalone email address where we just have this easy, memorable email address. So when I say on our TV app, I say, hey, by the way, you can email me at, and the idea is that email address is super easy, and so I'll say email me at, or fill out the next step card on our website. And so I'm driving all activity to take a next step. And so that's very simple. And then what I've done is I've trained all my volunteers on how to do that. And all my volunteers are doing this. And they know when they're talking to people, they're driving them down on the process. And so the other thing I wanted to talk about is metrics. And so metrics are really important because right off the bat, what you need to do is you need to have an honest conversation with your leadership. If you're the boss, you need to have an honest conversation about what is most important. Is attendance most important? Is salvations most important? Baptisms, whatever it is, groups, whatever it is, what are the key things? And so like in my context, I measure weekend attendance based off a 30-minute number. How many people watch 30 minutes? I measure salvations and small groups, how many groups I have. And so those are the most important things. That's how I get measured in success. And so those are all, everything is important, but really there's only certain things that are important in your context. And you got to figure out how you best influence that, those numbers. And so whatever your boss cares about, or if you're the boss, you figure out what are the most important things and how do you drive that. And then you critique your funnel, you critique your everything to drive those things. And that's how you are super successful. A great book is Covey, Four Disciplines of Execution or Success. That's a helpful book because the idea is we all have the whirlwind in our life that's consuming, but we got to be super focused on how can we be successful. Another one is Good to Great by Jim Collins. Is that especially when you're a volunteer team, you get everybody on the bus and you determine how you're going to go. You figure out what you're great at, and you got to be super focused on what's most important and how do you influence those numbers. You influence that through having a better page that's simpler, not a lot of next steps, but just a simple card so you can drive more emails. You talk about in your video, in your weekly service, about small groups, about becoming a member, and then you have better processes to help your core go down deep. And so you got to be thinking about that. But what I really, closing thoughts here in this course is, and this is kind of just, when you think about your funnel, you need to be honest. And this is where I do this every 6 months, where I'm really honest about my process. What am I doing great at? So I'm just going to throw some numbers in. Let's say you have 20,000 people watching your weekend service in some way, visits, let's say. Let's say you've had, maybe in a given year, you might have 10,000 people contact you, an email address, filled out a next step card. Let's say out of that, you've had 5,000 be part of a class online in some way. And then let's say out of that, 1,000 got into groups. Okay? And online groups. And then out of that, maybe 500 got into a home group. And then I actually do this thing in my context, so I try to help talking about a living room experience, I want them to subgroup. I want them to multiply. And so like maybe only 50 of those groups have subgrouped and they have some kind of regular gathering. And so these are the numbers, let's say hypothetically. And this is really important when you're thinking about strategically. Ultimately, this is what I want. I want them living out the 5 purposes, gathering in their home. That's what I want for my online community. I want a biblical way for them to express their faith. So the key is not how can I grow this number? It's how can I grow this number? Because right now, in order to get to 100 of these, I have to have 40,000 attending my weekend. And so there's 2 ways I do that. And really, there's 2 ways, but one way is super effective and efficient based off of money and resources is I tighten up this process. Is that I think I can get to 300 if I tighten up the loss, the retention issues. And then I also grow this with ads, Facebook ads, and searchable.church, Google ads, and so forth. But have honest conversations. Where's the loss rate? Talk to people who are down here that are your success stories. How did you do it? And what can we be better at? And most likely what it's going to be is It's going to be stuff around your website. Simplify your website, your next step card. Have regular communication where you're with email, where you're helping people, hey, classes are happening. Maybe it's some better training with your online learning platform to help your groups go to the next level. But think about your goals, have honest conversations, and be strategic with how you're doing this, because often what we do is that we get sucked up in this goal, and then honestly, we're not really thinking about those who are actually living out their faith, and we're not thinking about the core. And I call this the sexy number. It's the fun number, especially with Facebook ads and so forth. You can get 100,000 with some Facebook ads, but really what you're trying to do is here. And then if you do this for a season, you figure this process out, and then what you can do is you can have some honest conversations of like, hey, for every 10,000 people that attend that fill out a next step card, we can get, and once you can get this up to, let's say, 1,000, then what you can go is you can go to your leadership, or you can make financial decisions and say, you know what, I think we should spend $5,000 on Facebook ads, because we've got a process down. Because for every 10,000 people that fill out a next step card, we get 1,000 people that are subgrouping and doing this. And so the idea is that that's a scalable model. And so be strategic, know your process, know your funnel, know your vision. And once you get that down, church online can be a powerful way to reach your community and reach the world and do some really cool stuff. And I think in the future, when we think about this stuff, I think the future is super bright, because what you can do is you can use, and this is like going to be my globe, is you can, as you do this strategically, you can use the data points that people are part of online groups. This is like the Indian Ocean, the cool, I don't know. You can use these data points to help inform you where God is moving and how you can plant future churches and what you do. And so we do all sorts of next levels. We do local meetups in areas now. We do something with Zoom, with online meetings. Well, I don't, and I do this both, is that I go places physically, and I'll be in a state or in another country and say, hey, I'm going to be here, come, and I meet with my online community face to face. But I also do something where I do online meetups where I'll say, hey, I'm going to be in Austin, but I do it in an online forum, and I connect people from the area with each other. And so that's all next level stuff, but there's so many cool ways you can leverage this. But think small first. Think about who you're going after. Do you want to be a megaphone or global? How can you align this with your church's vision? What is your ideal use case as you drive people through your process? And what are your metrics that you want? Talk to your leadership, have good conversations, but there's a way you can do this to grow your local church, reach more people, grow the kingdom. And I'm excited for you to go on this journey. And if you have any questions, let me know. I would love to go deeper, and maybe we can even do some deeper coaching along the journey. So I'm praying for you, and I'm here to help.